Welcome to Amplified, which is Hub71's podcast.
If it was up to me, I would have tried to sell the company for a dirham. There is a level of regulation for manufacturing happening in the UAE. But for imported products, it's a lower regulation or no regulation. And that makes it difficult.
I think the labels of, natural and processed needs to be challenged, definitely. Because when we talk about today, something that should be natural, such as meat, right? Or dairy.
Yeah.
Do people really know how this meat is being processed?
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Amplified, which is Hub71's podcast, where we really talk about startup stories, some real topics, and try to get down to the nitty-gritties and truth behind everything that we talk about. I'm Divya. I oversee the startup journey at Hub71, which means from sourcing and selection all the way to startups going into programs, which means I get to work with some extraordinary founders, hear their stories, and get to understand what it's like to actually build a startup. And with me today, we have two phenomenal people who are extremely passionate about food. We have Ananya Narayan, who is the CEO of Hunter Foods, and I have Edward Hamoud, the CEO of Switchfoods, who is a Hub71 startup from cohort 16. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So let's get into it. I know we have a bunch of questions to get through, but before we deep dive into food tech and AI, we have a few topics that we're going to bring up. I want to talk about the two of you and who you are. And I think food is really personal. It's about culture. It's about, you're bringing in a lot of your roots and heritage. And so with you, Ananya, I think it was really great when I was researching Hunter Foods and who you were before you were coming on the podcast. I found out that one of the brands that you guys had is Safari. And now I'm a Middle Eastern kid. I was born and raised in Oman. And as a kid, you get at that point we used to get 100 bayza, and 1 dirham, and you'd go to the bakalas down the street and you pick a few chips. And that's how, we grew up seeing Safari everywhere. It was like a staple in everyone's house. And so it's incredible that that's who you are. And so food is super personal. And I'd love to know your why, like you coming into this, taking on a family business. Where did it all start from for you? And how does your values and what you like about food come into what you're building now?
Well, the idea was never to actually join the food business. I was in hospitality for 18 years. And Hunter Foods reached a point where my father's health wasn't good. The business wasn't doing really well. And if it was up to me, I would have tried to sell the company for a dirham. And I would have paid the dirham for it. But that wasn't an option. So as the only son, had to take over. And so I quit my job and took over Hunter Foods. This is back in 2014. At that point, if I was going to run the business, it had to be done our way, not what had been so far. So we really looked at where some of the issues had been, what needed to be done, what was important for my wife and I. And we realized, well, one of the key family values which had been passed down is a quote by Albert Einstein, which was written in my grandfather's diary by him, which read, "Nothing's more important to man than man." And more relevant today than even in 1949. My father took that to mean sincerity, honesty, and hard work. We took it to mean, how do we do everything better for you? Not only in product, but the way we operate. And so that was one of the key points that we wanted to bring into the business. The second thing was we were coming from hospitality, luxury hospitality. So how do we bring luxury hospitality, the thing that we know, into the potato chips business? And so a lot of what we've tried to do is exactly that. But stay true to what we believe. We're vegetarians. So all our products are 100% vegetarian. So there are a lot of things about us which we try to bring in, and then we've just tried to build it from there.
No, I love that. It's funny when you mention vegetarian. I have a question. Are you vegetarian? Before we get into this.
95% of the time.
95. Okay.
So I will have an occasional. So I come from a background growing up in the Middle East also where we consume meat twice a day.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A meal without meat, whether red meat or white meat, is not considered a meal. Right?
Yeah.
Today maybe I consume meat maybe once or twice a month if I'm invited. If there's a nice piece of steak, let's say, but never in the way we used to consume it, which was like minced meat in every dish, have it at home. My daughter, who's was behind a lot of the purpose that I follow, is purely vegetarian. So we don't have meat at home.
I mean, I was going to come to that. Like today, you look at the Middle Eastern culture, and you're Middle Eastern as well. Everything revolves around meat, right? From shish taouk to kebabs to, every meal has meat. And here you are building something which is alternative protein. And I really love to understand your why, like deep dive into that.
So I've been in the food business. So I come from an entrepreneurial family. I'm originally from Syria, from a city called Aleppo in the north, which is famous for its food, right? People pay very particular attention to their food. So I grew up in an environment where, creativity and building companies was always something that we like to do. I grew up in that environment. It's a family business. My grandfather, my father, my uncle. And, but I only went to food in 2005. I was in the States for a period of time. I was in telecom, I was in energy, and then back to Syria in 2005. And this is where my journey in food started. But I always looked at the business as a P&L, right? As a way of making a living, a good living, building, what most young people want to do is build a sustainable, healthy business and grow it and try to take it from being local to regional to global. And that was my ambition. My ambition was to make money, and food was just the tool, right? Obviously, 70% of Syria GDP is agriculture, so we had a lot of raw material, and the idea was to add value to these crops and export them. This is what we do. So we were in the basic commodities business. We had food processing plants, etc. Now the war happens in 2012. We obviously leave. We don't take part in politics. We've never been in politics as a family, so we decide to leave. We didn't want to get involved, and then by coincidence, I end up in the UAE, which is one of the blessings that I had in my life. And it was really a coincidence. I was moving back to the US, and then something happened, and I came to the UAE. And that's when a different aspect of food I started learning a different aspect of food. I started learning the importance of food on food security first, right? So Syria or Lebanon or the US, where I grew up, food was abundant, right? No, food security was not something that you discussed on a daily basis or in commercial discussions, right? Here I started, learning new aspects about my role. And between 2015 and 2021, I led one of the largest agri-food groups in the UAE. And this is also where the notion of food security was amplified, right? And then there were some specific health-related, instances in the family that caused me to understand the impact of what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. So before we used to, produce animal feed, sell it to the poultry farm, sell it to the dairy farm, milk the cows, sell it without really, look at the numbers, at the margins, at the distribution, and commercially. And then this, incident made me realize that, look, what I do actually has a real impact on people's lives, like their well-being. And this is where my journey into, better foods, better for you foods, healthier foods, plant-based foods started.
Oh, I love that. We were talking about it a little bit before you came, and Ananya was saying, sometimes
You're making me look like I was late.
just a little bit. But, we were just saying at some point, the food industry, you look at all the trends and how much of it is, people like the buzzwords, like it's natural, it's healthy, I want organic. We were talking about, low fat milk and full fat milk, like people, again, and this leads, I guess, to the next question. It's like there are so many trends that are happening right now, and consumers are constantly changing. I want to be healthy. I want it to be ethical. I want it to be organic. Everyone wants to follow the trend and the buzzword. Like, how do you keep up with that? Can you actually deliver all of that? Because you also have, big money and like VCs coming in and saying, okay, well, this is where the food industry is going, and this is what you should focus on. What do you see as the trends, and how are you keeping up with, how do you cater for all these people that have, I want plant-based food? The common notion is it's ultra processed. How do you deal with that?
We particularly as Switch Foods, we don't follow the trends, right? We are labeled as a food tech company, which is good.
Yeah.
It helps us at early stages raise a little bit of money because, as you said, VCs are looking for that next breakthrough technology that's going to solve or that's going to shape the future of food. Yeah. I actually, in the team, try to simplify things and go back to basics, right? I try to remind the team, yes, we have the tech part because we're obviously trying to create a product using technology, which we need to do, especially in environmentally challenged areas. Such as the areas we function in, right? Large-scale agriculture doesn't work in this region, because of the soil, because of rain, because of the environment. So you need, in order to be able to produce food at par, commercially at par with other countries, you need a little bit of tech in it. But I try to remind the team that at the end of the day, we're creating food. Right? Food tech has been great in the VC world, like you said, in the 2015s to 2020 during COVID. Now it's not that trending, right? We see, especially when we examine our category, is people are actually looking for simplicity in food, right? They don't want this ultra processing and all of that. So I think processing and ultra processing has been, overly used or washed, to be honest, because every food is processed, right? If you take cucumber and you put them if you chop them and put them in a bag, this is processing. So processing has different levels of processing. There's no food today that you buy in a supermarket that hasn't been through a processing stage, right? So, but processing is a wide range of processing. Right? So today when we talk about what we do, which is plant-based, and I'm happy to talk about the whole, alternative proteins, because plant-based is just one pillar of it. So then you have precision fermentation, you have cultivated meat. These are different, right? So I'm talking about plant-based. Plant-based is something very simple, right? And we try actually at Switch to simplify it even more. We use a very short list of ingredients that any of you can find in any supermarket or on Amazon.
You guys are pea-based, right?
So we use pea protein, and we just use our know-how and our experience, our expertise, our R&D to make sure that the elements that we combine together creates the flavor and texture that the consumer will indulge in, right? Because at the end of the day, food tech is a buzzword, is a trend, but if the food is not good, people will not buy it.
Yeah.
Right? You can buy food for health reasons for a period of time. You can buy it because for environmental reasons or ethics. But at the end of the day, you need to savor food. And I've heard you speak about this before, and I enjoy it when people tell you that you're making potato chips, and I enjoyed your answers to this question before. So people need to indulge food. They need to like it, right? I remind the team that, we've all been in a hospital or had somebody been in a hospital before. And the first day when people are scared, they don't know what they have, they eat the hospital food, right? The next day when they're diagnosed and they're a little bit more comfortable and all of that, they start complaining about hospital. They're still in the hospital, but they start complaining about the food. The third day when they're, getting ready to be released or discharged, they start cheating.
Yeah.
They're still in the hospital, they're still sick. They
Looking at
still need
Talabad,
to,
what do I order?
right? I don't like this. Get me a juice, get me a Pepsi, get me a chocolate, get me all that. So if we lose focus on the quality and taste of food, we will lose this battle. So not matter whether it's food tech or process or ultra process,
I
yes,
agree.
but we need to focus on the real taste. And in my opinion, you need to go back to basics to have the quality and taste that people are used to.
Yeah, I agree. But it's also in such a, 2025, the world is changing so much. People's trends, their taste, their likes, their dislikes are changing. And I'm sure you see that as well with with you guys distributing, I don't know, hundreds and thousands of packets of chips on a daily basis. I was going to ask you as well, when he's talking about food and flavor, I know a lot of marketing that you guys do is like, sunflower oil based food, trying to healthy snacks. How do you maintain flavor, but how do you also cater to people wanting to be healthier when they're snacking? And, how much of it is marketing and how much of it is real, and how do you find that balance?
So when it comes to first coming up with the product, it just like what Edward said, it's got to taste good. Because if it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter how healthy it is, people are not going to have it. So it's got to taste good. Now the question is, how do we prepare it in the more healthier way? So it comes back to getting the best potatoes. It's getting an oil that is going to, for example, the type of oil we use has only 7% saturated fat compared to palm oil, which is 49%. So it is then really coming up with the right oils, the flavoring. Our bag of salt potato chips are 3 ingredients: potato, oil, salt. That's it. We looked at some of our competitors. They've got 5 lines for classic flavor. They don't even call it salt because it's got 5 lines. They call it classic. So how do we simplify it? And that's how we make it better. We make it healthier. I'm not saying we make it healthy, but we make it healthier. But it starts with first getting the taste right and then working backwards to get every step. So first part was about the product, really about the potato, the oil, the flavor. And then it goes on to the packaging, and the packaging to be sustainable, and have as little wastage as possible. So it's working on all of those aspects. But at the end, the product has to be tasty, and crunchy and different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the truffle chips. I was telling Ananya, like, I didn't even know it was part. I mean, I knew it was Hunter's food and took a second to join all the dots. But for the last 3 years, I think every time I get on a flight, I have a little can of truffle chips with me. It's just my every go-to snack. And that was also from a trend, right? I don't know, someone discovered truffle oil, and before you know it, every restaurant and every place had truffle oil in all their food. Some people love that taste. But going back to what you were talking about with tech and these buzzwords of food tech startups, and there's a lot of innovation that's happening right now. And you're right, food tech is sort of interesting field. We see as Hub71 quite a lot of applications, interesting startups in the space that are coming out. But what do you see is essential for you today as Switch Foods, for you to be able to scale? You talked about, yes, you need to have an aspect of tech, but what do you see as the most important thing, especially in R&D, distribution? Where would you want to keep implementing tech?
People overuse also the word tech, right? So again, the more tech we use, the more process we do, right? So we have a balance here, right? So we try to simplify our process because we really focus on providing a healthy product. At the end of the day, I eat Switch almost every day. My kids eat Switch, right? My family eats switch. So I'm not going to eat or I'm not going to feed my kids something that I'm not really sure of how clean it is and how good it is, right? So what tech provides us is also the ability to trace the ingredients, right? People tell you, yeah, people who consume meat, who consume poultry, do they really know where this meat is coming from, where this poultry is coming from, what this cow is being fed, what this chicken is being fed? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because if they really knew,
yeah,
you would see meat consumption decrease tremendously. Now, the meat industry has done a wonderful job since the 1950s. You know, you can't take it away from them with the help of governments, right? Because when you look at statistics regionally and globally, you see that meat consumption per capita has tripled, more than tripled. You know, in some places like the US, it quadrupled over the past since 1950s, right? Eat more meat, eat more protein.
Yeah,
you've got government,
gains,
you've got the
protein.
lobbyings, right? So the way we consume meat today is not natural, right? So with Switch, we don't preach vegetarianism or veganism. We don't tell people what to eat. We don't want to intrude into your lifestyle. Yeah. All we're saying is like, look, there's today's statistics globally. The FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, recommends around 22 kilograms of meat per capita per year. Right now, if you're consuming 95, that's not gonna be good for you, right? And we know today, specifically in our region, or especially in our region, we've got 1.5 times the obesity rate, the global obesity rate. We have a major diabetes issue, cardiovascular problems all over the place. And a big part of it is related to what we consume, our food intake, right? Lifestyle can play a part. Maybe people exercise less, maybe people exercise more. But at the end of the day, the food that we consume plays a big role in our well-being.
Yep.
So the point is, what we try to do is to simplify the to bring transparency into also food tech, because people today are struggling not only with food tech but with any labeling. I mean, we know how labeling works, right? When you say product is organic, it could be only 70% organic, right? But it's still labeled as organic. We face that because we have ingredient suppliers, we have licensing companies, or you want to be organic? No, we don't. We know where we're getting our ingredients. We know how clean it is. And this is what we want to pass to the consumer. But to talk about scalability, I believe that today in our region, we need help, because we don't find the same level of education and awareness around plant-based diets as we do in, let's say, first world markets.
Yeah.
So you go to the US, you go to Canada, you go to Britain, you go to Europe, and you go to a supermarket and you have 3 aisles of plant-based meat alternatives, right? You stop someone on the street and you say you want a plant-based burger, and they know what it is. In this region, and from our experience, we advertise plant-based meat. We have food trucks. We participate at events. People eat the product and they love it. They're like, oh my God, this is so good. Do you know this is plant-based? They have no idea what this means.
Yeah.
Right? And then when we explain to them, they think it's grass-fed. They think that the animal is eating plants, right? Right? So that level of education, of awareness is needed in this region for us to be able to scale. So what we're doing today is actually we are transporting our innovation, our value proposition to markets that are more mature in order to help us grow and sustain until there is a bigger movement in this region that is not led by commercial cooperation like ours, but the education around this category. Governments played important roles in it, authorities, the whole 9 yards.
I mean, I have to say it's so difficult speaking to both of you who are vegetarian. Well, you 95% of the time, but And I would say I'm like 95% carnivore. We eat so much meat. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, it's true. All our friends and our circles, you know, especially now the trend, we're all, you know, hitting the gym, you know, whatever, 5 times a week. And it's all about, okay, our protein intake, how many grams of protein is in there. Easiest for me is to eat a steak or eat, you know, chicken. I hit my protein, which I know friends who work out who are vegetarian, and it's such a struggle because it's hard to find the right food. It's hard to find, especially when you are, you know, you can't just eat cottage cheese or like, you know, specific things to hit your protein intake. People are looking for it, but there's not enough education around it.
Have you watched The Game Changers?
No.
Watch it on Netflix.
I don't.
You know that the world's strongest strongest man is plant-based.
Really?
Completely vegetarian. Most of the top athletes, you know, are completely plant-based. They
so
don't consume meat. Basketball players, American football players, tennis players. Djokovic is plant-based, for example.
Yeah.
And a lot of them.
I love that. You're like, I know my facts, so you should go.
Not only that, like, you know, a lot of athletes today don't eat meat because of... So if you can get your protein with a third of the fat, with no saturated fat, with no cholesterol, with no, but you're still getting the protein.
Yeah, why not? And it tastes good.
And it tastes great.
Yeah.
Right? We run a lot of consumer focus group. We're at restaurants where people take their friends to prank, right? And they say, okay, try this kibbeh. They eat, oh, it's amazing. Did you know that this has no meat in it? And people just...
Okay, so maybe that's a revolution we need to start more in the... Maybe Hub71 can start it. You could do a breakfast with Switch Foods.
Would love to. I've invited the whole cohort to come visit Switch one day.
Really? That would be fun.
Changing perceptions one person at a time.
But no, thank you for sharing that. But I guess, Ananya, I go to you with like...
And you're going to be my next challenge, being a carnivore. I'm gonna drag you to Switch.
Oh my gosh, it's... let's see. I mean, I want to try this. I love food. And this is why I think I was so excited about this topic. And I said it when we started. Food is personal, it's cultural. And, you know, especially when you grow up not in your culture. Like, you know, I'm Indian, Sri Lankan. Spice is in my blood. I love spicy food. But I've never lived in either of these countries. I lived in the Middle East. We've eaten everything and anything. So food is really what excites me. We sit down with friends, we catch up with people. It's all over food. And it's always been, you know, plates and plates of kebab and steaks and meat. So I would love to see what the next part of life would look like, being, you know, at least implementing more plant-based food in it. Why not? If it's better for my health and I'm still hitting the same goals as what I want to, then yeah, I'll take you up on that. But I guess, Ananya, the reason we started talking about tech, and a lot of it is buzzwords, all right? And I'm sure you're massive manufacturing, distribution. I'm sure AI is being implemented now with like, okay, how do we, you know, automate more things? And the reason I was going to talk about tech, I've literally seen a startup that came up to us recently where they have AI agents that's like developing recipes and can also do like essentially automate more in lab productions. And there was this whole question we started asking as a team was like, at what point do you like, where is it the human, the touch, the chefs, the taste, the culture, where you have a lot of people allowing tech to replace things that they assume humans can't. For example, recipes, right? We were talking about this. Going back to our grandmothers and our great-grandmoms, the recipes live on in our house of how much you put of everything. Now you have AI agents building you recipes off the internet in 5 seconds. How do I make the best, I don't know, whatever, grilled cheese sandwich with some flavor or spice in it? AI agent will tell you 5 steps on how to make this quickly. There's a human element that's lost. How do you see this in your industry, especially now that you guys are large scale with potato chips distribution and the trends?
Well, one of the things, in fact, AI has become really the big buzzword over the last couple of years. And so the first thing we did was we said, all right, let's train all our people on AI. So we got an AI trainer, we trained our people and said, all right, now how are we going to implement AI? And the more we dug into it, it starts with understanding our own processes. And we realized it's not about implementing AI. It actually goes back to a whole process called digital transformation. But to actually get into digital transformation, we have to break down all our processes and see where the bottlenecks are and how AI can then help us mitigate some of those bottlenecks using technology. And so we're still in the process of doing that. Now, we're also building a brand new factory, which should be ready in the next 3 months. And so we're trying to say, all right, how do we bring all of this into the new factory? It's going to be fully automated. In fact, the inspiration is the modern day version of Charlie and the Chips factory. That's what we're trying to create. But then how do we bring tech into that? And there are different ideas that we have, but it's more to do still with automation at this point. It's not about, we will bring in elements of AI. When it comes to our product, we're still doing it the traditional way right now. Some of the things that you talked about, recipe from our mango chutney flavor is a flavor my mother developed at home. Our fried onions, she made it at home for more than a month. And then we took that recipe and tried to commercialize it. So we are still trying to recreate what we are making at home in a commercial manner, rather than saying, all right, let's go and use technology to build that.
Yeah.
We're still, because we want to use very natural ingredients.
Yeah, 100%. I think that goes back to what Edward was saying about, like, you know, the food that we eat, the kebab and the kebabs you're used to. So how do you keep the flavor, the taste? It always goes back to what resonates with people is the taste.
I think AI will definitely play a role, like he was saying, in scalability, in automation, in digital transformation. But I mean, I don't know when AI will be able to taste something, right? So
yeah.
So I think the way I look at it is there will still be chefs, right? But it's going to become more of a hobby, right? Or of a something like ultra luxurious.
Yeah.
And these chefs, which they do today, right? They teach other people how, you know, when you look at the Gordon Ramsay, they're not, they have, I don't know, 50, 60 restaurants in the world, right? They're not in every restaurant every day. Yeah. There are other people doing it for them. Now, to create that consistency, you know, you can trust an AI agent or a bot or humanoid more than you can, you know. You're right when you speak about your grandmother's food or your mother's food. But how many times, right, have you heard your father or yourself saying, this lacks salt, right? And then your mom would say, oh, I forgot to put this in it, right? This happens in every household, right? At least it happened a lot in my household. I don't want to put you under pressure.
I was like, I don't know. My mom's great cooking.
Every day, all day?
Every day, all the time.
Okay, you're blessed like that. But yeah, I mean, I look at, you know, just like Ananya said, humans were never, throughout history, were never able to stop technology or progress, right? So it's the best way how to use it. I don't think it would, specifically in food, or especially in food, it wouldn't replace the human element, in my opinion, at least not in the short term. Yeah. But it will help maybe reduce cost, maybe provide more consistency, these type of things. We use AI just for Switch today, or, you know, because AI is about just to learn more about our consumers, improve our distribution routes, learn about, you know, trends, markets.
Market trends, yeah, for sure. I mean, when you were saying that, it's a debate we always have, you know, on creativity, the artist, the chef, the taste you were talking about, especially now when I think the trend is the Ghibli studio effects. Everyone's taking photos and uploading it into GPT. This has sparked this huge debate of like, where's like the artist and the work that has to be done, and, you know, AI replicating, you know, a few different dots of it. But it comes back to creativity, what you mentioned about taste when it comes to food. There's some things that can't be replicated. And I guess, I mean, that's a discussion for another day. But I wanted to ask you both, I guess, if you were given, I don't know, an open-ended budget and you had to implement one piece of tech or a system today that could help you scale, what would you want to spend it on? Or where do you think it's necessary? Any amount. I don't know. R&D, manufacturing.
For me, I think it would be in making the manufacturing process as efficient as possible, as reducing waste as much as possible. Because as we scale and we start competing against some of the largest companies out there, we need to have that efficiency to be able to compete. And the bigger you get, the cost matters that much more. And so I'd really invest it into gaining that efficiency. And at the same time, there's less waste, which is good for everyone.
Yeah. No, I love that.
I would personally spend it in R&D.
In R&D?
Yeah, because I definitely feel and believe that there's still a lot of unknowns around food. Right?
Okay.
People, when you talk to dietetics, clinical dietitians, nutritionists, all of that, there's still this subjectivity, and you still get different answers and different advices from
100%.
different people, right?
Yeah.
And some people tell you, no, follow this diet, no, follow this diet, do intermittent fasting, do keto, do low carb. That's a sign that there's a lot of room to be done in the R&D space with food. Nobody has the right answer. And then if you can take that to the next level and today you're talking about food is personal. I heard you say it a few times during this podcast, but you were referring to the taste aspect of food, right? How do we personalize the health and wellness benefits or the match, right? All of us, or at least I've done an intolerance test, right? And I figure out that I'm intolerant to tomatoes, right? How would I know? How would my nutritionist know that I'm actually intolerant to tomato and it actually slows my metabolism, right? So I think there's a lot still more work to do on the characteristics of food. I think that nutritional pyramid, I don't know, was it called Maslow, or I don't know if I can, the food
Carbs,
pyramid,
I
think that was done 100 years ago. I think that needs to change for
and
sure.
Everyone's still following that.
Everything still follows it. No, independent of how much research has been done in the last few years, people still think, okay, carbs is that, protein is that. So when people start learning more about the amino acid profiles, their own intolerances, what they like, what they don't like, and what those really, again, foods you see today, kale is a trend, right?
Yeah.
How much do you know about kale, and why is it a superfood? You just heard that kale is a trend, but you don't really know why.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why. I eat kale. Every salad I order is kale, but do I really know why? No.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you research kale, there are different, there's a wide spectrum of articles that talk. Quinoa is another example. Why is quinoa so, it was in Peru for thousands of years and nobody was picking it up for $1. Now a ton costs $3,000. Why?
You guys have quinoa chips, don't you?
Yeah, and we distribute quinoa, which we bring from the Peruvian farmers.
So when I was in the grains business, every trade show I used to go to, whether Anuga or Cialo, people just say, we have quinoa. I was like, what is this? Nobody wants it. And then all of a sudden, quinoa is 100x in price.
Yeah.
And maybe today you have a hard time finding it as well.
I think, there are a lot of foods, we call them superfoods right now. Yeah. We've been having it for centuries. It's just now that we're figuring out what are the qualities about them which make them so special. And
the marketing engine behind it.
No, absolutely. And a lot of these trends actually start in LA. Generally, what we've seen, it starts in LA and it moves across the world. Now, when we look at something like chia seeds or quinoa, you look at flax seeds. Now, flax seeds, in my mother's household, it was fed to the horses. It was not for human consumption. Now flax seeds, we use it in so many different preparations.
Yes.
But because it's 100% protein.
Yeah.
And so I think we're just rediscovering a lot of foods that we used to use in different ways. But how can we use those today to better our lifestyle? Macana or fox nuts is another one. It tastes like popcorn, but now people are saying, well, where do we go with the next phase of that? And so that's becoming very fashionable.
Yeah. That's the world. That's what I was saying, like trends, and it's ever changing. And I can see like 2025. I mean, I make fun of Sada all the time, our TikTok queen. Every day it's like this famous influencer saying this. The brands are sold out. Like you cannot even go and find the product that you want because it was all over TikTok for the last week, and everyone's going to buy it. And all I have to do, get a good influencer to talk about switch foods, and you have people going into that trend. So market is super important, and it's something I want to talk about again later. But conscious of time, I want to talk about regulation. Now, both of you are homegrown UAE companies as well. And I know Edward has some stories that I'm going to pull out of him for this, but Ananya, I wanted to start with you. I mean, you've been a legacy food company. You guys started in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 1985.
1985, there you go. And, I'm sure starting that to where you are today, it's been quite a journey. And I think this question is more for, many of the other founders and startups who might be tuning in to understand, opening and setting up a business over here and having to scale in this market. What was regulation like for you? What were the things that you had to go through? Tell us some good and bad stories.
I think regulation is good overall because you need the regulation to keep certain standards for the food. And as you scale, that becomes even more and more important. So you do need to understand that. However, it needs to be a level playing field. And at times what we've found is there's double standards because there is a level of regulation for manufacturing happening in the UAE. But for imported products, it's a lower regulation or no regulation. And that makes it difficult because now rather than getting the benefit, we're actually on the back end. We're having to compete with products which aren't following the regulation. I mean, there are packets of chips which don't even say which oil they are cooked in. They say we use either palm or sunflower or safflower or canola. So then how's the nutritional information right? It can't be. It's impossible because you have to say, depending on the oil, the nutritional information is made. But if they don't even write that, then how much does the customer know about what they're actually consuming? Now, being in Dubai, we would have no choice, but we have to declare the oil, which I think is the right way. Yeah. But that's just an example. So in terms of regulation, I think overall it's good. But it needs to also come with understanding. Yeah. So one other example, people say, well, if you're fried, then we won't allow you to be in schools, but if it's baked, it's okay. But at times, baked can actually have more oil than fried. You just put the oil before you bake it to give it the crispiness. So baked doesn't mean that it's actually better.
The two of you are crushing so many dreams and hopes of mine today. But yes.
So I think...
I'm going to go to your desk and see what you have on it.
Clearly no more baked chips and going to cut down meat.
I'm not saying all baked chips are bad. But it is about really going into the detail and really understanding the products and the ingredients and then making the decision rather than saying blanket wise all fried is bad or baked is good because it's not as simple as that. There is a lot more detail one has to look at. And those are things that we like to measure ourselves on a quarterly basis. So, for example, we are 100% non-GMO. we were 83% of our products were MSG free. Now we're 100%, but we worked on it for 3 years to make sure every single flavor was MSG free. But, it's not because regulation told us that we needed to do that. There's no regulation for that, but it's something we wanted to do. I think regulation helps have a certain playing field, but it needs to be consistent.
Yeah. Come on, Edward. How was it for you?
Look, for us, it was mixed experiences. First of all, we are creating a novel category in the UAE, right? So when we were importing elements, we worked with a lot of flavorist ingredient suppliers around the world to create 100% natural plant-based taste molecules, right? Because like we are non-GMO certified, we're vegan, we're gluten-free, we're halal. So we really worked hard on our ingredients. And then when you try to bring and we worked with a lot of also smaller size companies, right, who were willing to listen to us, right? Because if you go to the big flavor houses and ingredient companies who are selling, Lay's and Coca-Cola and Chupa Chups and all, they're not going to want to develop or, go into R&D with you for the small quantities that you're going to buy off them. So, when we try to import a flavor that says, vegan beef flavor, right? From, let's say, I don't know, the US, not the US, we don't do the US, but from a non-GMO country, Spain, let's say. Yeah. People at customs will ask us for a halal certificate, right? What's great about the UAE is that you can interfere and you can go to someone and say, listen, this is vegan, this is plant-based. Oh, what is plant-based? You can explain, you can get some articles, all of that. The decision makers are supportive. They want to help understand. But at the beginning, until we got a few first shipments of ingredients in, it was really, really tough.
Yeah.
And also on the standards part, when we go to QCC or to G42 for the microbiology or for the nutrition testing, they don't have the plant-based standards. Every category has its own standard in their book, right? So this is 51. This plant-based had no standards, so they were comparing it to meat, and they were comparing it to vegetables and all of that. So it took effort from us to sit down with them and say, okay, you need to really understand what we're doing, or this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? Your testing methods need to change and needs to follow the global standards for our category. So that was in terms of regulation. I think the UAE is very good at controls. Right? In regulation, at least from my experience, we don't like to take risks here, right? We outsource that to the FDA or the European Union, and we follow their standards, but we control really well on products that are manufactured locally. So whatever is coming in, there's really no control. And not only, even in the feed industry, when I was in it, poultry, we know that. It's a trading hub, right? While for us, for example, you see a representative from Adafsa in our factory every week.
Yeah.
Not every week, sorry, every month. Unannounced visit, he comes, he checks. And if he gives us an A- instead of an A, oh my God, it's a disaster, right? And we all stress about it. This doesn't happen elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to food factories everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? I'm spending a lot of times in the US because, as Ananya said, a lot of what had the trends start in LA, and the market is large enough there, and I see how things work. Right? It's not as clean and precise as controlled as it is over here, but overall they're supportive. Even if they don't know, they're looking to get you through, get you to work. Sometimes it takes time and effort, but we're there. But if we talk about more advanced categories, in our industry, you have the cultivated meat, and they're not comfortable touching that. They will let somebody else. And a lot of the countries around the world are like that. That's why we see like a lot of development happening in Singapore, because Singapore wants to lead in regulation and all of that. While here we like to take our time and understand better and follow.
Yeah. I think the plus side about the UAE is that at least it's kind of what both of you are saying. It's still a very small market where they want to get involved. So you can call up, the ADAVSA and the food regulators, and it's easier to work with them. I mean, we see this in a complete different spectrum of like in our digital assets. We launched a Web3 vertical about 2 years ago, and regulation in that space is very difficult. It's still being discussed today, but you're able to actually work with the regulators. And I think that's one thing that UAE is still, stands apart today, is because it's the proximity to the people who can help you make those decisions is a lot closer, and it's easier to do business here. But man, Edward, I was really hoping you'll give me like a horror story of something that happened, but it's okay. I'm not
off record.
Off the record. But we keep going back to the trends, and something that kept being on my mind, and it's also relevant to the two of you, is like the Dubai Fix-It chocolate. We were talking about this the other day. I don't know about you guys, but in the last 6 months, any place that you go and travel to, you'll see this Dubai chocolate. And it's really insane. Like I was in whether it's like Zurich, Amsterdam, like the most smallest village and neighborhood, they were selling Dubai chocolate, but it's not Dubai chocolate. It's just chocolate, and they've named it Dubai chocolate. And it just became everywhere. But we were looking at the other side of it, saying, oh man, Dubai is on this map, right? The UAE produced Dubai chocolate, even though whatever they're selling was not manufactured in the UAE. And I remember, I think I saw an interview recently of the founders talking about how they're now trying to figure out how do you manufacture and distribute quickly and scale as fast as the demands of the market, because everyone wants to try this Dubai chocolate. But it put UAE on the map. And I think when you look at both of you being in an industry where you have a brand and a label, how does global expansion now work? And how do you, I'm not saying you should become the next Dubai Fix-It trend, but how are you navigating that? And how is scaling globally look? I guess I'd go to you.
One of the things, I think, being based in the UAE, we sell into 65 countries. And our largest market a couple of years ago was Japan. And we caused truffle mania in Japan. So at one point, supermarkets were only allowing each customer to buy one pack of chips. They weren't allowed to buy more.
No way.
And so, not to the scale of Dubai chocolate, but we did cause a huge stir into the market, to the level where even brands like Pringles had a Pringles gourmet black truffle with the same gold and black can in the Japan market, because we were able to really start a new trend over there. Coming back to being in the UAE, see, the strategic location here is very advantageous because as for a company, especially in chips, as much as we're in the food business, we are in the logistics business, because so much of what we ship, it's light and there's a lot of air just because it's in packets of chips. So the cost, for example, to send containers from here to Japan is cheaper than sending a container from here to Saudi. Now, most people wouldn't think that, but it does make a lot of difference. And that's where being based here is very advantageous. Brand Dubai is also now more advantageous. Brand UAE, again, is very advantageous. So all of these things, so whether it comes to the branding, it comes to the lifestyle, the image, the location, the ports, the efficiency, all of these things are actually helping us scale. And so as we look into the future, we're still looking at growing more than 3x in the next 4 years. But most of that is going to come from international markets.
Yeah.
Because that's where majority of the population are.
Yeah. What about you, Edward? I mean, you're starting off from here.
Look, we start off from here knowing that this is not the biggest plant-based market globally, right? And this was a discussion with our investors. But we wanted to start in a smaller, more controllable market, in a market that we knew, that at least I knew as a founder, that I could navigate in. And we decided to be, or we our ambition was to be the large fish in a smaller pond than the small fish in the ocean, right? And that has worked well for us right now, because as a startup, you also learn as you grow, right? This is not a legacy business or a traditional business that, you can, like I was in milling before, and I know milling is the same for the last, 100 years, just improves it. This is just a novel category that you need to learn. You need to work on the R&D, on the tech, on the flavors, on the distribution, on creating the category, creating the market. I think being in the UAE provides credibility, right? Especially vis-a-vis or when compared with other markets in our region, right? That don't enjoy the same credibility with regards to quality and controls as the UAE has. So I was recently, Switch was exhibiting in the Natural Product Expo West in Anaheim, in Los Angeles. And, people stop by oh, this is a great product. Where are you based at? Oh, Abu Dhabi. Oh, we know Abu Dhabi. We love Abu Dhabi. We want to come visit Abu Dhabi, So people know Dubai. They know Abu Dhabi now a lot more as well. And it's like a good conversation. I was in places before where it was more of a showstopper, or people would not be very excited in doing business with these countries. But our model is based on, leveraging what this infrastructure gives us in terms of logistics, in terms of reputation, in terms of challenges, and applying those learnings as we scale abroad. So our business model was never about only producing in the UAE, because logistics costs play a big role in our cost of goods at the end of the day. So our ambitions is to grow and to have different manufacturing sites around the world, still be headquartered here in Abu Dhabi, and to the rest of the world.
Yeah. I think keeping in from both your answers, and also, you touched about this like a couple of minutes ago, we talked about food security as well, which is a lot of where you came about with Switch Foods. I think we saw that during COVID, right? Like that was probably the time that made everyone stop and actually grocery stores, what was actually available, bread, rice, and the most basic things. Keeping that in mind and everything that you guys just talked about right now in scaling your business, where do you see yourselves in 10 years? What is Switch Food in 10 years? Where is Hunter Foods in 10 years? What's the ambition? What's the goal? What's the hope?
For us, the hope is to inspire better snacking and to be the leading gourmet chips manufacturer, chips brand in the world.
I like that. Better snacking. What about you, Edward?
On the beach in the south of France.
I love it. That's the realistic answer.
That's the real answer, right? No, I think
with my snacks, with my healthy snacks.
No, so I, we started with a region, we started with a regional ambition, but a global dream, right, from day one. And if you look at the first investment deck that we share with our investors, the dream was to start here in Abu Dhabi, but to grow to the rest of the world. Now that journey takes a lot of hard work, courage, resilience, persistence, luck, all that you want. But I would love to be operating, a $1 billion company out of Abu Dhabi that started in a place that no one will think of as a food hub in the world, right? Having sites in different parts of the world, and maybe also be part of a larger group, right? A larger operational group, whether it's fully food focused or not, that will give you the might, the firepower to do what needs do in 5 years what usually takes 30 years to do. And I think this region also provides these possibilities.
Yeah. So in 10 years, every kitchen should have Switch Foods in it.
I think every kitchen will have more and more plant-based as consumers, with growing education and awareness and disposable income. People, when you look today, the health and wellness and the longevity industries are, blooming all over the world, right? Everybody's looking to become healthier,
live longer.
live longer.
Yeah.
You know, life is good, right? Life expectancy is growing. So people will understand now. People will adopt these more plant-based products into their diets. It's for Switch to see of how much of that, you know, fridge space or share we would have, and that's up to us. And this is where we know we're bringing in all the innovation, the simplicity, the short, you know, ingredients list, and
Yeah.
listening to our consumers.
Well, as we wrap up, I mean, you both are so passionate about food, so I wanted to ask you both, what's one belief about food that you wish more people would challenge? Like, on a personal note. Both of you in the food space, I mean, you're constantly talking about potato chips and snacking. You're an alternative protein-based industry. Like, I'm sure there's something about food that you wish people would challenge more. I mean, you already challenged me, so pick another one apart from my meat-eating habits.
I think there is the belief that food, that snacks, if they taste good, they can't be healthy or healthier. And I would want people to challenge that, to say, look, we can actually have healthier chips which taste better. They are more flavorful and crunchier. And if that becomes the norm, and if people can feel less guilty about having snacking, but better snacking, and that becomes the norm, what a great world. So we would want people to challenge that.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Edwin?
I think the labels of, you know, natural and processed needs to be challenged, definitely, because when we talk about today something that should be natural, such as meat, right, or dairy,
Yeah.
do people really know how this meat is being processed? And is this a natural way? Right? So before, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, you know, cows used to just graze in the prairies at their own, you know, pace and all of that, right? Give you 10, 15 liters of milk per day. Now when they're giving you 40, and what are you feeding them? When animals are going from, I don't know, 10 kilos to 200 kilos in 3 months or 6 months, before you used to take them 2 years. Is this really natural? And what's going into this historically natural foods that we consume? And how are they being actually so farmed today or factory farmed? And then also the processing, right? So because a food is innovative, that doesn't mean it's processed. As much as, you know, more traditional foods that are very highly processed. So these two, I don't know what to call them, these two elements or these two words, natural and processed, people need to dig a little bit more into what they're doing. And this is, you know, when you go today to a retailer and you see a kilo of frozen chicken coming from Brazil at 20 dirhams a kilo. And then you see locally grown chicken at 70 dirhams a kilo. And then you see free range at 90 dirhams a kilo. And then organic at 130 dirhams a kilo. So how can you have chicken at 20 dirhams and chicken at 130 dirhams? If there's nothing, there must be something drastically different in the way those chickens are grown, right?
Yeah.
So otherwise, everybody would sell chicken at 130 dirhams a kilo. So I think those little realizations here and there are very important for people to realize, because before it's too late. Because when we see cancer rates, when we see, you know, other blood diseases and all of that, again, it's always when it's too late.
Yeah. No, I mean, to what both of you said, it's you have to challenge that sometimes. Again, I always go back to, I think, especially in the food industry and food tech and everything that we're seeing, so much is driven by consumer trends. It's people setting the tone, and, you know, this whole phase of, oh, it's organic, I want to eat, you know, a fresh farm to table concept. I don't want to, you know, buy from this store. I'd only buy from this store that I know they've picked the vegetables themselves. great. Like, it's kind of what you said. How much do you actually know of, the grass-fed cows and the chickens and what are they being fed? You don't actually know a lot of it. People stick on the label. And so 100%, I feel like more people should challenge that and want to eat better and cleaner rather than the easy way out is this is organic, it's baked, it's air fried, it's better. Because that's easier, right? And then khalas, if it costs between 20 to 50 dirhams, then it should be okay.
Look, without getting into politics, there's also a reason why there's this big movement in the US about RFK Jr. and Make America Healthy Again, and then him starting to ban all these ingredients and all of that. I don't know what he's doing. I'm not saying that what he's doing is right or wrong.
Yeah.
But there are definite, today you have the same product, a Kit Kat bar, right?
Yeah.
That is sold in America has different ingredients than the one sold in Europe.
Yeah.
There are elements in, food ingredients in food in the US that is banned in Europe or banned in Russia or even banned in our region. Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah.
So some people finally, in some places, are paying more attention to what's really being used, right? And then with our kids, it's huge as well because we play a role in teaching our kids what to eat. So if, we've always grown knowing, let's say, carbonated drinks are bad for you, right? Or are not good for you. They contain but we are used to them already. But my kids never had them in their lives. So why would they're not missing anything. Same thing with meat. Like if they can have a kafta sandwich or a kebab sandwich or a burger that's so much healthier without having the meat, and they won't even taste the difference. Why give them the meat version? This is, what people need to realize.
I love that. Well, one industry at a time. I think food tech for today.
One person at a time.
Yeah, one person. I'm thinking my startup life, but I want to thank you both for being here and for anyone tuning in and listening. I think we've mentioned a lot of brands about Hunter Foods, but you can find them on Instagram, on the internet. You can find out more about Switch Foods when you join me in my journey of alternative protein and trying this plant-based protein.
We're going to need Sarah to document all of that.
You'll probably follow our TikTok trends, but
make you famous.
We'll definitely, you guys are on Instagram, they're on your websites. We'll put more socials and follows. But is there anything you want to leave our listeners with? Anything. It could be on being an entrepreneur, being in food tech. It could be in what you're in today. I don't know, discovering new flavors, staying authentic to your heritage, to the legacy that you've built. Anything you want to leave us with?
I would say, it's good to actually learn more about food. I would encourage everyone to really learn how to read a nutritional table and read the ingredients, because rather than having other people lead you and try to convince you of things being one way or the other way, if you know, then you can make the better decision. And so I think it's not a very difficult journey. It's something which we are going to, in the new factory, we will have lessons for people, especially kids, to learn about nutritional information and really reading ingredients. But it's something I would encourage everyone out there to really look at and understand, because once you do, then you can make better decisions about what you're buying every single day.
Yeah, I'll just build on that. Very well said. I would say, just be courageous, learn more, make your own decisions, challenge the status quo, right? Try new things, try to understand, because the world is progressing and so is food. And try and decide for yourself. Read and decide. Do the work.
Do the work. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you both again for giving me your time, for giving us your time.
Thank you,
and going through everything possible. And we will see you next time on Amplified.